Good evening and welcome to the June 19th, 2013 Agenda Review Meeting for the Pittsburgh Public Schools Board of Education. We will start tonight with the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Ms. Baer, there is an amendment or correction.
Revision. So if I can just point that out to you. It is on the last part, the budget adoption under general authorization. It's Exhibit A. It's on the desk in front of you, and it's the yellow sheet. And there's two changes. The first one is the second title, OPEB Trust Fund, is we replaced that with OPEB Financing Services, thanks to Ms. McCrae's good eyes and thinking that that looked better, which it does. And the other one is at the very right bottom corner, the percentage is actually 5.0%, and the other one was listed as 7.6. It was an error. So that was the changes. Is there any questions? OPEB is for the retirement benefits, post-retirement benefits.
Thank you, Ms. Baer. Are there any questions for the intermediate unit as a whole? Mr. McCrae?
I just want to point out that we also received the audit for the intermediate unit. And do you want to touch on that at all? It was a successful audit.
It was very successful. There were no findings, and that means that that's very positive. So thank you for bringing that up.
Got your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
Yes, thank you.
And this is also their budget, and it's appearing in this month's agenda. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. McCrae, just to follow up, because just their budget cycle is different than ours. So their budget is for the period July 1 through June 30th, 2014. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the intermediate unit? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the Committee on Education. And forgive me, I have my things out of order. Proposals, grant, we'll start with proposals and grant awards, items 1 through 15 in the green. Do you have, okay, Dr. Lippert? Yes, you do.
I do have to take you into your orange folder. We do have an item 15A that I'd like to draw your attention to. I apologize if this wasn't in your packet. This is an acceptance of the second year of the Keystone to Opportunity grant funding. It's the second year of a 5-year grant, and we're asking the board to accept this tonight so we can continue the implementation of the KTO grant, which is funded through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lippert. We'll start over here with Ms. Khaleesi, items 1 through 15A.
Thank you. I know that a lot of my questions are answered as you read through here, but I think that given the fact that we have future new board members in the audience that need to understand how some of this works before they come on, I'd like if we could touch on this a little bit, keeping that in mind, okay? So like for number 1, this is Title I money. Is this Title I money only earmarked for school improvement?
Yes, this money is only earmarked for school improvement.
Okay, and will we still, we'll still get the rest of the other Title I money, am I correct?
Yes, I believe that's item number 2.
Okay, and then what about the loss of funds because of this, that, and
Yeah, and
every other excuse?
For Title II and item number, Title I and item number 2, as well as Title II, within the tabs, there's a note that specifies how much was lost, and that was due to sequestration. So it was about a 5% loss for Title I and about a 2.1% loss for Title II.
Okay, and what are we doing to try to make that up, to fill in that gap? What'd you say?
We're going to have to make adjustments in our budget because we really can't backfill the gap, and
Okay.
if that's what you're asking. So we'll have to, in terms of how the money's used, we'll have to make adjustments.
Okay, and then, for example, on number 1, it says that each school has reviewed their comprehensive school improvement plan and identified areas of weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. And what I was curious about is who, I know that the PDE played a part in the allocation of this money, but who actually reviewed, I guess what I want to say is who actually reviewed their plans and decided what schools was going to get what kind of money? How does that work?
The list of schools is included in the additional information. It's based on their status in the previous year. So the board may remember that we have schools that go into warning, schools that go into school improvement 1, school improvement 2, corrective action 1, corrective action 2. And their funding formula from the state is based on that. So the plans are always reviewed internally first. I think Dr. French brought that to the board. You had the opportunity to look at it, and then we submit it to PDE.
Okay.
The way that the funding works, you can see that there's different amounts from
Right.
70,000 to 40,000. Do you want me to review that very quickly?
No, I just
Okay.
wanted to make clear exactly what the process is. I don't think it's necessary we go on to the amounts, okay? On number 4, it says about the third line from the bottom of the first paragraph, it says, "This position consists of," I was curious to know what position you're referring to.
It's the position of the ESL coordinator.
Is that someone we're going to be hiring?
No, that's currently, I believe, I don't know if Ron knows this off the top of his head, but that position is split funding. Some of the salary comes out of Title III for the servicing of our ESL students, and then I don't know if the remaining comes out of Title II, but I think it's split funding. Title I, yeah.
And is our title tiers going to stay the same? You know how we do the title tiers and all that?
Yeah, the tiers are basically going to stay the same.
Okay, thank you. So on number 5, have these funds, and this would be Ms. Mike, have these funds been lowered as well, or have they increased? I don't know where she is.
I'll try, and then Angela can correct me if I'm wrong. We did take, so this is an increase over last year.
Okay,
However, from the 2011-12 school year to the 2012-13, we took a pretty significant decrease in CTE funding, about $260,000. It was a 29% decrease. However, from last year's funding to this year's funding, there's a 4% increase. So we're not back to where we were in 2011-12 with CTE funding. However, we did see an increase from last year to this year's funding. The reason for that is the census data that we're serving more students that qualify for poverty right now. And that's why we had the additional funds, an increase in the
so it
Perkins.
has nothing to do with how many students actually are in the programs and are succeeding in the programs or have tested in the programs like we used to have to deal with?
All right. Angela can come up and,
Angela Mike, Executive Director, Career and Technical Education. That is part of the formula for our funding, our students who are succeeding. We have 8 performance indicators that they look at under the Perkins Grant, where we have to make an increase of 2% yearly. So that is part of the formula, and the other part of the formula would be the census data.
Oh, so it does have both. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mike. We kind of touched on this conversation already, number 9. This is from the Department of Education for early childhood. This money has decreased as well, has it not? And does that mean we're serving less children?
Carol Barone Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. These particular tabs that you have before you today are for early intervention, and we really cannot serve less children. We have to serve all the children that have the special needs, so we just have to find ways to do it as efficiently as possible.
Wow. Number 10, did you know that this kind of money was coming at this point in time, even though we're on a different budget? Did you have an idea that you were getting this sum of money?
Sorry. We had an idea of the amount that there would be some increase. This one, this particular 110, it shows an increase.
Thank you. Number 12, about the third sentence down. The child count for 24th sentence, I guess I could go to. December 1st, 2012, child count is a 7.5% decrease. So that was December's count. Do we get a recount at any point in time to adjust those dollars?
Mary Jane will come and answer that one.
Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Education. We always count December 1st from the previous year for child count for funding for the next year. So that will occur, the child count will occur again December 1st, 2013. And then we'll get the IDEA funding for the following year. This 7.4% decrease was actually due to sequestration
Not to the child counts.
and a slight reduction in students with disabilities in the overall district. But basically, it's because of the sequestration. We were expecting a 5% decrease, and it ended up being a 7.5% decrease.
And are we in the same situation that if we end up with a major increase in students, we still have to serve them with?
We
with-
still have, yeah.
With this funding?
Yes, we still have to serve them.
Wow. Number 14, I really would like to commend this program. It should be applauded. I'm happy to see that we're part of it. This is the mayor of Pittsburgh's summer youth employment, and I'm glad that we're very much active in part of this. I'm sorry that we didn't do it last year, but we were able to do it this year. Have we been able to employ all these kids? Do we know?
Mary Jane's walking away.
Oh, I didn't realize that she...
I actually thought this was the second year that we're doing the mayor's program, not the first year.
Well, it said, see, when I read that, I kind of got confused, because when I read it, I got the impression that 1 year was skipped. So I might have read this wrong, or...
No, that's an annual grant that we receive for our students with disabilities through the SOS program to be able to provide internships during the summer.
And have we done that? Have we made sure that all of our students have had that?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
You're welcome. Mr. Brentley?
Yes, just a couple of quick questions. Can somebody tell me, from 1 to 15, how many of these would be considered new grants, first-timers, you know what I mean? I'm looking at 2 or 3, and regardless of how small they are. I know the target is not an annual grant. It looks like it's a first-time or a one-time kind of thing.
Items 1 through 4 are annual,
Okay,
and those are really funding our title program, school improvement, Title I, Title II, and then Title III, which is your ESL.
okay,
Number 5 is an annual. That's funding our CTE program, Perkins. Number 6 is a new grant, and that's funding Perry High School for 2 years. Number 7 is for Pittsburgh Morrow. They're receiving a grant from Target in the amount of $25,000. Number 8, unfortunately, is a retroactive. It's a Target grant. It already funded a field trip at Faison. Number 9, 10, and 11 are annual grant acceptances, and that's funding our early intervention program. And numbers 12 13, 14, and 15 are all annual, and that's for programs for students with exceptionalities. And number 15 is going to be annual for, after this, for another 3 years, and that's the Keystone to Opportunity Grant. So the majority are annual, but there's a couple ones thrown in the middle that are new.
Okay, so it's about 75,000 of this are one-time new, one-time, one-shot kind of thing. You know, I think what would really be helpful, I guess, just from the district's point of view, and even parents, if we put out a document annually just showing the one-time grants that we receive and the variety. I know there are a couple of other large retailer, big box stores have given grants over the years. There's been a variety from the couples here to individuals. And I think if we put that out and also show, I mean, similar to what we used to do 2000, I think, with former Superintendent John Thompson used to put out a number every year of the kind of money that was given to Pittsburgh Public Schools for college. I mean, it would be in the millions of dollars. And I just think, you know, to hear that and to see it would kind of encourage some of our parents. I think it's good for the city to be able to say at the end of each year, we put out, you know, out of 1,000 students that have graduated, there's a commitment of $50 million for scholarships. Also, we've received over $1 million in one-time grant, because those one-time grants, most of them, if I'm not mistaken, are competitive, where someone had to submit the proposal or some recommendation, and we were chosen above other school districts. And so I think that's a excellent selling tool that we should consider doing. And also, you want to brag about that. It should be on our website as well, and then just show how annually we change in terms of the kind of dollars that we bring in. And then finally, what is the process when we see the annuals event? If it's an annual event, and I understand if we get $1 million, let's say for special ed, okay, and if it's a 4-year thing, so every year, it's something that we just draw down on, I guess. They set aside, and we have to annually submit the application. What happens to the grants that we go after and apply for? Let's say if there's a national or federal initiative for special ed students, how do we as a board know that we're making application, that we're going to be making application, and then where does that decision made? For instance, if they say there's X amount of federal dollars available for early childhood, and we decide to apply, how do we as a board find out? We just ought to, because what we get is a finished product. What we get is them telling us, okay, we got a grant for so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. How do we find out the scope prior to that, so the board can possibly have some input and some suggestions, you know, as to, you know, the application when and if it's submitted?
Excuse me just one second, Mr. Brentley, I'm sorry. Just because I remind everybody to turn off their cell phones and pagers, because we're not being able to hear you clearly because someone has a phone on. Dr. Lippert?
Typically, so what we could do for the board, if you're interested, is we could make the actual proposal submission available to you. There was a time that you were approving us submitting proposals as well as accepting, and it just got confusing as to, you know, 1 month you're saying, yes, you commit this proposal, and a couple months later you're accepting it. And it just got to be very difficult to keep track of the proposals. So what we can do is always, I think our process is supposed to be, I'm saying this for Erica so she knows, because we had some transition in staff, is that we typically, through the board update, are supposed to let you know when we're submitting a proposal. So if you want more information or to provide input, you would know. And then, of course, if we're successful, you would see it a couple months later or whenever the proposal's accepted.
See, for me, Doctor, and that's helpful, I wouldn't want an entire proposal, and not even third of it. What would really be helpful to me is a 1 or 2 liners. Hey, I'm reading in the newspaper, there's a national initiative, federal dollars for fathers, okay? I'd like to see the district say, we are submitting an application to target fathers from K to 5. That's all I need to know. And then we keep our fingers crossed, or if we have some suggestions to recommend that you would consider in that proposal, and then we can keep our fingers crossed with you, waiting to see if we are chosen. So no, I wouldn't want the entire packet, but just something to know that we are constantly in the motion of applying and making applications, and it's just good to know that we're on top of it as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. It's good to see items 9, 10, and 11 as far as monies for early childhood program. However, because of the sequestration, there has been somewhat of a cut, even though those three do total approximately $6.8 million. Ms. Barone-Martin, could you tell us how that translates into positions in classrooms? What effect that would have?
Carol
Sorry,
Brune,
may I please remind everybody to turn off their cell phones and pagers so that we can hear? Thank you.
Carol Barone Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. Because this is the early intervention program, not all the children are served, only a small portion of the children are actually served in classrooms that are early intervention classrooms. Most of them are served in either the early childhood classrooms or in child cares or in their homes, wherever their natural environment is that they would be anyway. So there's not that much of a loss of classrooms. There's only going to be one that's going to be lost. But we just need to really tighten up on the services of itinerants and other people that provide service. But otherwise, you won't see the kind of loss that you see in the early childhood education whenever there's classrooms cut.
Thank you. That's good to know that there won't be any decrease in service to the students. Not necessarily decrease, that the same number of students will be served with fewer resources in this sense. But I always want to keep an eye on anything as far as early childhood program, because that's our future, and if we bring our kids up right, that'll go a long way to their success matriculating through the system. It was mentioned as far as being able to either summarize or sort, and I know Mr. Campbell's in the room, but if it's not being done, if there is another way to do it, but eventually some point in time, I don't want to suggest any work for anybody at this point in time, but we could keep each one of our board tabs in an Excel spreadsheet. And to summarize, if we wanted all the first year grants, you hit a button and it pulls them all out, or if you wanted all the annual grants, hit a button, pulls them all out, or if you wanted early childhood, hit a button, pulls it all out. It's because we have a number of items in our education agenda this month. I don't think we generally have that many. We have 61 in total, but it would take 61 entries into a spreadsheet. But doing that work, the utility of it for questions asked, or for summarizations, or for presenting information, or for categorizing it, and it could be even coded according to what's on the tab as far as which goal it relates to, et cetera, and just tidbits of information, something that wouldn't take a lot of keystrokes, but getting the pertinent information in as far as the amount, when it expires, the time period, title, and if you wanted to request information, you could do it in an easy way. I'm not as certain of whether it does exist at this point in time in the district. However, we can look forward either through, and I heard a mention of board docs at the table here, or however we move forward, that to keep those kinds of things in mind, to eventually not have all this paper in front of us at some point in time, and especially not color-coded. But if we're going to move as a district in terms of saving money, saving time and effort, fewer people doing things, those are the kind of things we should keep in mind. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
You're welcome, Mr. Sumter. Mr. McCray?
Thank you. I think most of what I wanted to talk about was covered, but I do want to recognize the Pittsburgh Foundation for their funding of Pittsburgh Pioneer. Every year they give us this grant. The summer youth program with the city is phenomenal. The fact that Target is funding, field trips for both Faison and Morrow. This is great, and Verizon is helping Perry with their program. But I do want to point out number 5, the Perkins. This is great. Mr. Sumter and I both attended the meeting of the Perkins recently, and to know what CTE is doing right now, we've been talking all these years saying, they're doing more for CTE now. There's good news and there's bad news, but they're working towards it. And this is part of it, the fact that we're getting almost double, am I correct, Ms. Mike? Almost double the, new applications, almost double the number of students in the CTE program. This is great. Somewhere we're doing something right. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. McCray. Dr. Lippert, I think, just on number 15A. Well, it lists the base funding that's different than the amount you are asking us to accept. Did we accept the rest of that last year?
Yes, the amount listed on the front was year one funding that we expended throughout this year. And then what you're approving in the actual amount, the 1.7, is for year two funding.
So we spent like 270,000, or did we actually get 1.9 last year?
I see what you're, our funding for last year was 1.983, and we did spend that. I'm not sure exactly what the balance is, but we're pretty close to expending that by June 30th. And, a lot of that was salaries because we have 8 specialists that are serving schools, testing that we already paid for, and resources. So we're pretty close to spending that 1.98. And so what you're accepting now is the second year funding, which is 1.7.
Okay, thank you. And why is this only grades 3 through 6 and 9 through 11?
It's, part of the grant stipulation is that to make us competitive, when we submitted the proposal, you had to focus on grade spans. So when we submitted the grant, we focused on areas that we felt were the most problematic. So 3, 5, and then the 6, the 6, 10.
Okay, could you, I missed part of what you said at the end because of, background noise, thank you. Okay, you said you had to make you competitive, you had to focus on grade spans, and you said
And
something
we had to
else.
justify it based on a data analysis. And so where we built the most compelling case was in the grade spans that we have listed.
Thank you, Dr. Lippert. I know, maybe they should come and join us. We're having a good time. So we will move on to consultants and contracted services, items 16 through 44. And we have and this is the pink section, and we have a walk-on that Dr. Lippert, Dr. Lane. Oh, that's mine. I'm all discombobulated by the noise in the back. So, goodness gracious. The walk-on tab is 16A, and it's for a consultant that is to be determined, for an expense that is to be determined, to work with the board and Dr. Lane to get her goals established and get the superintendent's goals established, and to help with the superintendent's evaluation, which we have contract dates goals are supposed to be established by July 31st, and the superintendent is supposed to be evaluated by December 31st?
I think it's sooner than that, but.
Yeah, by sometime later this year. But this walk-on tab is a placeholder to prepare for next week, so that over this next week, we can work out the details and hopefully have a fully fleshed out tab to present for approval next week, so that we can get support in evaluating and goal setting. So with that, we're in items 16 through 44. Mr. McCray, would you like to start?
Okay, I'll just bring your attention to item number 19. This is a genealogical and historical research. This is phenomenal. I know my cousin traced our family back to the 1500s. So to be able to do that, it just shows where your roots are, and I think this is a great idea to do this. There's some other great programs in here, like the BLAST program with Carnegie Library. There's lots more field trips and things like that. So I think it's a very, very lengthy and in-depth package, and I think there's some really great stuff in it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Again, 25 through 35 are all related to early childhood programs. A lot of them are for support services. It's still good to see. Out of the whole packet, out of all 61 items, 19 or 2/3 of the items relate to the early childhood program. So again, we're doing a lot for them, but a lot needs to be done also. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Brentley.
Number 16, who is this, Dr. Tour or Dr. French? Dr. Tour. Okay. This is the second time for this, correct? This is last year you will do this? And these were the AmeriCorps workers working, this is during the school year? Working with students, tutoring and that sort of stuff. This is the second time. The first year they were part-time, am I correct?
No, I believe this is, we'd have to go back and look, but I believe they're used in the same capacity that they were this past year
Okay.
to do the mentoring program and to do some tutoring and the structured recess activities.
Okay. Now, this is the total cost to the district? Or,
Yes, the amount here, and that would be from their site-based school budget, not out of our general operating dollars. It's what's allocated to the school.
okay, so when they say full-time, what does that mean? Because if this is a total cost, then the agency picks up the other portion of it?
I'd have to follow up, but I know that you want to answer that question?
My son is actually working with Keys this year. It's a volunteer position. Basically, they get paid a stipend, and this covers their stipend.
But this figure is covering 3 individuals? Okay. 3 full-time and 1 part-time. Now, I raised a question before concerning, of course, 2 years ago, we laid off staff that were responsible for some of those same duties. Are we at all in any kind of violation at all? And where do we stand district-wide doing something like that? I mean, business-wise, you can see where it makes sense, but are there any legality issues with having employees, full-time employees providing the service? We lay them off and then hire someone who is not members of the union, but not doing at the rate that the others were paid, but doing it much less. How does that work, and are we at all coming close to any kind of violation at all?
No, this is actually supplemental work. It's not supplanting any of the collective bargaining work.
Okay. And so they can, I mean, there's no contractual agreement. It can be an annual event. And how many other schools, are there any other schools that are doing a similar setup?
To my knowledge, and would have to check with the school performance office, but I know last month the board approved an AmeriCorps agreement for Linden.
Okay. And so we clearly have an outline in terms of things that they are allowed to do that are not either union items or full-time responsibility items that full-time employees are providing. So there's a gray area or some kind of line that I guess we don't let them cross over, so there's no issues.
It's typically, you might also remember the board approving tutors from Pitt for UPrep. They typically provide supplemental services outside of, again, what the collective bargaining agreement dictates for teachers. So they're not supplanting any collective bargaining position work.
Okay, and that's good to know too, but I think, remember, those tutors were part-time. This is a little interesting with it being full-time, and it can always be viewed as something else. Second is the number 38, and this is the maximum health services, and I think we talked about that before in terms of contractual services, and I just want to raise the question and continue to try to get conversation around that, is making sure that they are closely working with those medical folks or nursing folks or anyone in our buildings that are providing these kinds of services, and to I guess raise the question again, if there's ever an opportunity to have a discussion, are we ever going to get to a point? I know we do a lot of contracting out of similar services, and is there ever an opportunity to do some kind of study to see if it makes sense to hire, to have our own individuals?
In this case, we don't believe that it would be, it would make sense, so to speak. We think that clearly we do have a number of full-time employees that provide health services in our schools, but there are some instances where this is actually a better model and certainly one that's less costly. We really do think we've maximized both sides, because clearly there are most of the positions are ones that are that we have employees, full-time employees for.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Scalise.
Thank you. Back to number 16. We've used Keys services before. I know that, I remember that. Do we have evaluation of what their work quality was?
I know that the schools have records of what they contract because it's typically through the school. Whether that is actually submitted to the school performance office, I'd have to go back and check. But I mean, we can go back to the schools that actually use them, and I know they have record of what they agree to in the contract. If you'd like to see those.
I would like to see those before we vote on this.
Okay.
I also would like to see the actual contract if I can. And the boxes were not filled on this one, other than nonprofit and Pittsburgh, I guess. But, okay. And it says,
Mrs. Scalise,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, none of the other boxes can be checked.
well, it's a company, is it?
It's not a company, it's a nonprofit.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Then number 17. Again, what kind of evaluation tool will we be using for this contract? And, because this is a nice chunk of change. And when we'll be able to sustain this type of work ourselves? I mean, I understand I truly understand what's being done, but when will we get to the point where we won't have to farm this kind of work out and we'll be able to do it ourselves? And what kind of evaluation tool are we using to see if it's worth even doing it this way? Or, and I don't know if I'm asking the right person.
No, you are.
Okay.
This is related to the online academy. This one definitely is.
Okay.
I have the context here.
Okay.
So this is definitely an up to amount because the way that we pay for our online students is based on enrollment. So if we enroll 10 students, that would be $50,000. If we enroll 20 students, it's $100,000. So you pay $5,000 based on enrollment. It's not that amount. We expect and project based on our enrollment trends from last year that we would approximately spend 1.5 to this contractor, but it's all based on how many students we enroll. So last year, we were with Waterfront Learning. I think the
Right.
board may remember this time. We are making the recommendation to move to BLN, and it's, again, a turnkey. So just reminding the board, without going into too much detail, a turnkey model for our online academy means that we get the teachers, we get the instructional materials or technology programming, and we also get the hardware. So we get the laptop, the computer, the printer, the mouse, and we get the connectivity. So there's 4 things that we get for the $5,000 per student. The reason why we're switching providers is because this model is much more able to be customized. Waterfront Learning kind of is a product that you have to take off the shelf and you can't customize it for the district. Our issue here is that we decided that 100%, synchronous, asynchronous, where the student never has interaction live with the teacher, wasn't really the best for our students. So this vendor is able to provide synchronous, which means I'm online and my teacher's there too. I'm required to attend a daily homeroom. I have 24/7 tutoring support, and those are some of the services that Waterfront just couldn't provide us.
Okay, so you answered one part of my question, that the tab is not actually $1.5 million. It's going to be $5,000 per, okay. Does that amount include the cost of the principal that we're providing?
No, that's based on, so we can do a detailed projected budget. This is just in the budget, so as we hopefully either attract students back that have already left for other cyber school, you know that we either stop money from leaving, which would be at least $13,000 for regular ed, and I believe $28,000 to $29,000 for special ed. So instead of that money going out, we spend $5,000 to keep them. There is a cost that we also build in the budget for the staffing of the school, which is in addition to this. This does not include so this is what we pay our provider for turnkey, but it doesn't pay for what like our principal, our liaison that's actually managing our side.
But it pays for the teacher.
Now, we're not using our PPS teachers to teach our online academy. Eventually, as we move into year 3, which is not next year, it's the following school year, 14-15, we are supposed to start integrating our teachers. This vendor actually allows us to be able to do that much easier.
Okay, so here's where my concerns are, okay? I remember, and not very clearly anymore, but I remember that we started out with this number when we first started this whole online thing, let's say 50 kids. And by the time half the year went by, we only had half of them. We found out that they weren't coming online. We found out that, all kind of things took place and the numbers shrunk, okay? So how do we know for sure that this company is not going to, I'm not trying to say anything negative about the company. I really don't want anybody to think that. How are we watching this and making sure that, yes, there is 100 kids signed up, and yes, they are online every day or whatever whatever they're supposed to be doing, okay? How do we know that's happening? That's my question as far as how are we evaluating and watching this whole thing? Because we obviously had a problem last year. What are we doing to make sure we don't have the problems this year? Other than the
Yeah, so there's a couple of things at play. This provider is not 100% accountable for having enrollment stability in our school. I mean, a lot of that also entails our side with how thorough we are at orientation. So one of the things that we've done is extend the orientation. This company works with us to provide intervention. So if a student, for example, is not doing their work at home, we have started a tiered program where we require them to come over to Greenway, and they have to spend a certain amount of time live with, right now, Mark McClinchy, soon to be Dr. Crenshaw. So we've done things, we can't expect that a provider outside is solely responsible for our students, which is why we fund and staff a position in-house to make sure that we're communicating with their brick and mortar school as we transition, we're making the right placement. We know that every student doesn't have necessarily the disposition to be successful in an online environment. So we have to do a lot of work to make sure the students that we place in the school actually are set up to be successful, and that's on our side. And the other thing that we need to do is intervene and, as much as possible, personalize. We're also looking at, you're familiar with the PRC model where you have advising periods. We're looking at bringing in slowly our own teachers to be advisors, mentors, in addition to their online school. But it's not 100% the provider. How we evaluate this provider is the quality of assignments. If they meet our agreement, this is really like in the weeds, but how fast are they at resolving technical issue? If a student submits a ticket that they can't, their printer doesn't work anymore, or they were kicked off, connectivity, and they have to call the principal and say, hey, I'm offline. So we look at how they actually are providing services to the student as well as the parents.
And will Dr. Crenshaw be able to watch this company to see
yeah.
that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
She sees on the back end the types of feedback that teachers are giving to students, how often, if a student sits and doesn't do something for a full day, she can see whether that teacher intervenes, immediately call. One of the things with Waterfront is we never had direct contact with the teachers. This company allows us to have direct contact, so the principal can actually call a teacher that we don't employ right now and find out what's going on with the student. So this just allows us more personalization, which the more you personalize online learning, even though that's difficult, the more successful your student population is going to be.
Okay, and the contract allows us to get out of it at some point if we need to?
Same thing we did with, because we're so new into this, 100% online learning, We didn't want to do a multi-year contract until we really know. Plus, we're building out our model. I'm thankful that we did a one-year contract with Waterfront because it wasn't the best fit for an urban context serving the amount of students. Even though we had 50 students that had kind of stable enrollment, we had over 150 students in and out. So we moved a lot of students, a lot more than what Waterfront is used to servicing in a district. You know, they service one, maybe, they don't service the amount of students that we have that move back and forth. So we have a lot to learn, and I'm glad that we're only doing a one-year contract because it really allows us to learn. As we build out the model year 3 to 5, I think we'd be, doing longer-term contracts because we have our model design, bringing in our own teachers, things like that.
So is there a plan in the future that we do this and don't hire a company?
Yes. The hardest thing is the curriculum because I'm not really endorsing right now that we get into the development of online curriculum because you have national companies that do this, that it's easier to buy the instruction, but we definitely can. Teachers, technology, I know Mark Campbell and his team are working on us actually owning and leasing the equipment. So those are things that we work out as we build this out over 3 years. But right now, we're still in a turnkey model for the second year. But as we go into year 3, that's when you're going to start seeing. You can buy from all of these providers. You can buy connectivity, if that's all you need. You can buy the hardware, if that's all you need. You can buy the instructional programming, if that's what you need. You can buy instructional programming and teachers, and the district does the hardware and connectivity. So it's not, you don't have to buy everything in a package. You can kind of mix and match, and as your program grows, you might diminish the amount of services that you're actually purchasing. Right now, we're purchasing everything like we did from Waterfront for this year with this company.
Okay, thank you. Number 18, Compass Learning. It's marked as new. I thought we've had Compass Learning before.
So we have Compass Learning. It's a companion item in the business. We've had Compass Learning for
Ever.
it like predates me. In terms of the technology, what's new is the professional development contract. So we have the ongoing renewal for the actual instructional technology, but this is actually bringing in to help teachers understand a new module and how they actually use the writing component. That is a new piece of the Compass suite that we'll be utilizing more given the movement to the Common Core in the elementary K-5.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Schuler.
You're welcome. And I just want to second Mr. McCray. Number 19, the Riverbends, say it on the mic, because I'm not going to even try.
Genealogical.
And Historical Society. I wasn't going to say, I know it's not coming out right. Item seems really exciting. And I hope that schools across the district really try to take advantage of this, because this seems like a really cool idea. With that, we will move on to payments authorized, items 45 through 49. In the blue, Dr. Lippert, do I have anything to add this time? Okay, good. Mrs. Khaleesi? Mr. Brentley?
Yes, just a general question. For number 45, and this is on the back, these are all or some of the vendors that we will be purchasing tickets for over the next year or so. And does this represent an increase or a decrease in terms of dollars we usually spend for tickets, entrance tickets to different events?
Carol Bruin-Martin, Executive Director for Early Childhood Education. It is the same list as we've had in the past, and then teachers pick from that list. So essentially, it's the same amount. They each get an allocation on what they can spend.
Okay. And so we just buy the ticket straight out, or we try to get a block price or a good deal on the tickets for our students?
We always negotiate the best deal that we can whenever we deal with these vendors.
Okay. Well, I think I like the variety. I think it's a good thing. I'd like how it's separated the places where there's no fee and then the ones that are. And I only say that to say that I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a shock jock on KDKA who made a big deal out of the fact that we were purchasing tickets for some of our high school kids to see a a performance for a marching band, a nationally known marching band, and actually one of the local newspapers even wrote a little blurb about it. But they made a big deal out of it. Oh, the district is spending money on these tickets, and they're sending kids here, and they're sending kids here. And so it's important. And so it's just good to see a variety, and it's interesting how, if you want to make a big issue out of something, you can take it and you can make it. But it made absolutely no sense. It was a great experience for our kids 5 years ago, just like most of these activities will be a great experience for our students as well. I want to ask final questions on number 49. This is $350,000. This is for the students. Oh, I think I see it here, and I was going to ask the question. No, it isn't. This isn't the answer. How many students does that cover roughly? I know they said that there are 3 students over the summers. This isn't just for 3 students over the summer.
Licensed. Mary Jane Conley, Executive Director, Special Education. These are for students who attend our licensed private schools. Licensed private schools are schools for which we pay 100% tuition. These are for students that we cannot service in our own programs due to significant disabilities. We probably have about 8 to 10 students in this program right now, and we're trying to reduce that.
Okay, so this number reflects about 10 students.
10, probably a couple of more than that. I'd say 10 to 12.
Okay, but once again, these are students that their behavioral issues are such a challenge that we're unable to provide.
And not only behavioral issues, but students with significant autism and behavioral issues, students with mental health issues that have severe and significant disabilities that need intensive supports and services that we are unable to provide within our district.
Now, this may not be something you can answer, but Dr. Lane or anybody can chime in. Have we ever entertained the thought of providing that kind of specialized services in-house? And I know I'm sure it's labor-intensive and the whole bit, but have we ever thought about, I know we got the employees that can do it, but is that something we've ever thought about? We have the facilities.
What we have done, Mr. Brentley, is we have brought a significant number back from private placement in terms of providing programs for them, but there still is a very small number of children and young people for whom it just totally makes more sense, both in terms of the servicing of the child and the finances, to do it to people that's their specialty area. Because if a child has a special need that requires several, whether it's mental health support or other medical issues, that to have them in a place where all those things are available makes more sense than to try to bring all those different people in and a site we might put together, because all of these children don't need the same thing even. They need different things.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. No comments at this time.
Mr. McCray? I actually have one on 48, I think. Does anyone know, Mrs. Connolly, do you know how much against this did we spend last year?
This is a similar contract as to what we spent last year. We have an up to amount to service speech therapists who go on leaves of absence or medical leaves, so that we have to implement students with IEPs. So we contract with Crossroads Hearing and Speech to come to the district to provide those services.
So I guess let me rephrase it. It's up to 90,000. What did we actually spend?
I don't have that exact figure for you right now, but I can certainly provide it.
Are you here? No. You don't know? You don't know me, Mr. Camarda? Nobody knows? Okay. So yeah, I would like to know if that,
Okay.
what we spent against that. We will move on to general authorization, the last section, items 50 through 61 in the yellow. Mr. McCray, would you like to start?
All right. First, I'll start with number 52. This is a visiting language specialist from Japan. I know about, 15, 16 years ago, I had the pleasure of hosting a Japanese, actually, Daiichi Takase. He stayed at my house while he taught at Perry. And this is this is the exact program. Mrs. Valdivia is great. I think she's going to have a good time. I hope this works out for her just like it did then. Number 51, the Hill House Passport Academy Charter. This is open to all children throughout the entire city, am I correct?
That would be my understanding. I think you're asking, would it be limited to children in the Hill District? No, it's not.
Thank you. Just want to note that the Pirates are giving us tickets for the kids for the Summer Dreamers Academy, the Gifted and Talented. The summer musical program is going to happen again. Go Band Camp. And, the donation for the Greek Orthodox ladies. I can't say that word. Help me out.
Orthodox? Wait,
No.
no, I can't say that one either.
PHIL. Anyway, thank you very much. Very generous donation. The Code of Student Conduct, I think we fixed that, right? Thank you. That's all I have.
Give me an easier one next time, Mr. McCray. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Item number 51, which is adoption of revisions to Board Policy 1012, parent and family involvement. I'm sorry, 50. I'm going to do 51 too, but 50.
You said 51, that's what.
Sorry, 50. Adoption of revisions to Board Policy 1012, parent and family involvement. I would say that this is probably one of the more important policies that we have in the district. We want to improve parent, family, and community engagement, and this pretty much charts the course for how to do that. The concern would be whether or not this policy is being implemented throughout the entire district to the same level throughout the district. I know there's probably some best practices out there. Perhaps there may be need for some standardization, things that Central can help, things that the schools can do. It's, first of all, being reduced by at least 5 pages. The old policy was 28 pages. This one is 23 pages. I would suggest that if anybody who wants to read a copy to look at pages 2, 3, and 4, which pretty much spells out the purpose of the policy. It's online in terms of being a policy in the district. However, it perhaps emanated out of the Title I program as far as requirements for the Title I program. But at some point in time, those requirements may be good for the entire district because it does have some sections that talk about Title I schools and non-Title I schools as far as what they can do. But some of those practices may be good for all the schools in terms of talking about how parents are involved in the planning, review, improvement of the district's policy, how they're to hold an annual meeting for each school's participation, parent meetings, including parent conferences held at different times during the day, paying for transportation, how parents and families are involved in the planning, review of the district and school-level programs, including the Title I program, a description of how district schools involve parents in the joint development of a school-wide program plan, and that's specific to the Title I, but it's required under No Child Left Behind. How the district involves parents in the joint development of school-level improvement plans, how the district will provide parents of participating children with timely information about school programs, and I'm saying things like that. Some things can be done centrally, some things could be done by the schools. Maybe we would save money in doing that, and standardization could come about. How the district schools will provide parents of participating children with a description and explanation of the curriculum used in the schools, forms of academic assessment used that are used to measure student progress. These are good to have as a policy, but if they're not in practice, and if there's, it would be good if we had 100% involvement by parents and families in the school district. It's not, it's possible. However, I don't know that it's being carried out and to what extent, how it's being carried out at each particular school. And it talks about how schools will provide assistance to parents in understanding the state academic content standards and student achievement standards, local academic assessments, how to monitor, providing parents opportunities for regular meetings to formulate suggestions, participate in the decisions relating to the education of their children, school parent compacts that are jointly developed with parents and the schools, but it keeps talking about what the schools are supposed to do, but my concern would be not putting the entire burden on the schools. If we're operating as a district or a system of schools, there's some things that central office could probably help out in working jointly with the schools. There's some things that could be farmed out throughout the whole district, not putting a burden on each school. Description of materials provided for training to help parents work with their children to improve their children's academic achievement, literacy training, using technology, fostering parent and family involvement. And then it goes into the policy as far as what it's intended to do. But I would suggest that those who can get a copy of it, look at it online. If not, folks can call me. I can get them a copy specific to that, email or send it to them. And also make it easy. If you go to maybe our homepage and there's a link that stands there that you click on it and it goes right to the policy without having to click on our district, click on the board of directors, click on policies, knowing how to search for that particular policy. You'll still get the same result, but because of this one being so important and because we're going to be voting on it next week, any way possible to make it available to folks to understand it. But again, it's back to how well is this policy being implemented throughout the district and what needs to be done to make sure that it's implemented district-wide and at the same level or a higher level than heretofore has occurred. Not knowing what each individual school is doing or not knowing the good and the bad results of this, but the thing is to make sure that it's benefiting all the students and all the families and parents throughout the district. Again, I would again say that this is again perhaps one of the more important policies of the district because of the concern for engagement in the district. Item number 51, this I would say is a very good complementary program to the programs that we already have in place. It's going after a population that sorely needs to be brought back into the system, and look forward to the success of this program. And we're going all the way to 61? Okay, 61, language clarifications to the policy. The intent is to not, to reduce number of suspensions for students, to clarify the difference between disorderly conduct and disruption of school, to clarify alternative placements, to allow certain excused absence for parenting teens and other minor language revisions for clarity and consistency with current practice. And this is the amendments to the Code of Student Conduct. Again, another document that should be readily available to folks. And if anybody has any comments or concerns, the opportunity will come up at the public hearing, which will be on Monday prior to the legislative meeting. But again, everybody, board members, the public, prospective new board members, we all need to jump on the parent and family involvement policy and the Code of Student Conduct to know them well and to also know how well they're being implemented. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
You're welcome, Mr. Sumter. Just for clarity, public hearing is Monday, June 24th.
Thank you.
At 6 p.m. and you have to, if you would like to testify, you have to call some number. 412-622-3868.
That's it.
Before noon on Monday, June 24th. Thank you. Mr. Brentley.
Yes, for number 50 and number 61, or both in the same ballpark, they're changing policy, board policy, and then number 51 is adding or additions to the Student Code of Conduct. I think these are very important documents, but to me, this is the perfect example of a not-so-parent district-friendly process. While it may be good and may be needed, you don't change policies in a bunch. And you don't just change it because of who the chair of the committee, who is not here, Mr. Iser, and I've shared this with him many times, and you don't surprise parents. Yes, you've had an ad hoc committee of parents who've had some involvement, but in a struggling school district, you do not want to strap the parents' hands or handcuff them in terms of their involvement. We can still boast about certain areas where we have a fairly decent parental involvement. But when you do policies and procedures like this, number one, it's awfully intimidating. Number two, it is a surprise. And number three, some of us will have to sit back and wait and see who will it impact or who is it targeted this time. Policies, language, wording is very important. Board members, before those of us who are here, worked very, very hard on some of this language. And for us to have a committee or committee chair to just take them in a bunch, and we'll get some attorney that will hide behind them, say this is illegal, we got to do it. Still, it's not right. And so, on behalf of the parents out there, I'm sorry, I won't support it, but this is about the second or third time we just snatched up section of our policy and say, now follow this, or react to it. You don't do this when you're trying to keep a district together, and you don't do this when you're trying to get parental involvement. And then we cannot forget the most insulting thing, when we tell parents, here's the information, and if you have anything to say, go to the website. A large percentage of the parents do not have access to the website or to the internet. And then if they want to come to the public hearing and the information was shared, that was helpful, but it's a moot point. What could we possibly change within 24, 48 hours? What are we willing to change in most cases? And so it is just the biggest insult and the slap in the face to those of some of us here who want to do our job as board members, and that is evaluating policies, set policies, and creating policies. It's not up to one individual because of his or her power and authority to snatch things up, to change as he may see fit, and then the rest have to respond to it. It is not the proper way to do things. It is not the proper way, in my opinion, even a chair should operate when you're trying to keep people in the district, not run them away. So it's something I won't support, and my apology as a board member who's been here for 14 years. I have never, ever seen anything like this before, where one person can snatch up, make words, tweak things, and then have the authority and the power to get it passed, and then we later find out its impact on the community. Number 51. Doctor, is there a dollar, what is the dollar amount for this annually?
Mr. Brentley, I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, step back to the parent engagement policy, and I just want to make sure the board does not misunderstand this process. This policy actually was not modified in the policy committee meeting. It was modified through a process that involved the Excellence for All Parents that we have parents in every school in the district that are part of that group that worked for months on this policy. They worked on it, they modified, they revised, they talked, they discussed. Also, as representatives of their school, part of what they're responsible for doing is providing their PSCC at the school information on the kinds of things they're working on and getting input from parents that aren't a part of that group as far as their feelings, beliefs, understandings, concerns, whatever it might be, on the parent engagement policy. So I do not have the exact number of parents who were involved in this, but I would say it's probably over 50 parents that have had their fingers on this, but had the opportunity to read it, respond to it, and state how they thought this policy should read. So I wouldn't want you or other board members to think that this was developed, in isolation of our parents. And I really want to thank the parents that spent all the time they did on this, because they were diligent in their efforts and gave it very careful consideration and spent as I said, literally months on it. So it's been a long, long process, and I thank those parents so much for all the work they've done, and also their efforts to reach out to other parents in their schools. Back to your question.
Doctor, let me briefly
51.
respond to that first, because I just want to say, too, that let's agree to disagree on this process. It is, if you've had 50 parents, if you've had 100 parents, we have to take it very, very seriously when we change a word in the policy and how it will impact the children, let alone a whole packet. If you've had 5 meetings, if you've had 10 meetings, the fact of the matter is, when you make these kinds of changes, they're here and they're sticking, and people got to now follow that. You do not move forward the way it is, and let me say, this is me saying, and I know it is, we do not disagree with this chair and Mr. Eisler, and that's part of the problem too. It is not the way that you set a policy if you want people to be involved. And it's unfair to say parent engagement. They're not engaged. They are not engaged. Those few who were helpful and involved, and I agree with you, I thank them for their service, but these policies will impact many, and I guarantee you, most of them that will probably be impacted don't even know it, don't know anything about it. And so if we don't have a system in place, we need to develop one where we can reach out and we can talk about it, and we can reach out again, and if there's anything extra to single out those who can or will be impacted, we owe it to them. The last thing we want is folks to throw their hands up and say, I'm confused and I'm leaving the district. So we agree to disagree. As a parent who is active, along with my wife and I, we both work full times, we're active in the communities, and you just can't make all the meetings. And so it's up to us as a board, as the directors, to reach out and to do something differently. I totally disagree here. I totally disagree with the process Mr. Eisler used a year or so ago, and I disagreed 2 years ago when he changed the policy to lower the standards. You don't do those kind of things without full parental involvement. This was not the case. So we agree to disagree, and let's, if you can respond to number 51, I appreciate that. What's the dollar amount?
I do not have a dollar amount, but it would depend on the number of students that actually enroll in the school. And so the way charter schools are funded is based on our per student cost, the district's per student cost, times the number of students that actually enroll. And I believe our current per student cost for charter school payments is about $12,000 per student for a regular ed student. So it would be that $12,000 times the number of students that enroll in the school.
So don't we have to kind of budget something to kind of know what we're working with, or kind of generalize?
The role of the district in either recommending to you a approval or a disapproval on a charter school application, and I believe we talked about this when we were in this space the last time, is based solely on the merits of that application. It is not based on the district's ability to pay. Now, if you approve it, that does mean that you will be also, the district will be then obligated to pay the per student cost for the number of students that enroll. Now, when we build a budget, yes, we're going to have to make adjustments to deal with that. But as I said, the cost is not one of the factors we're allowed to consider.
Okay, so first year, if they come up with 10 students, we pay, or if they come up with 200 students, we are responsible as well.
That's true.
But now, some of the charter schools, I thought we allotted, say, a growing, first year, 25 students, second year, 50 students, third year, and like a growing. Like on some of the schools when we closed schools, we added on that extra grade level, so we were able to kind of manage and kind of know that. How do we,
Because this is a different situation where students are actually, these are actually students that had previously dropped out, then the grade allocation is probably not as pertinent. And I'm trying to recall if there was anything in their actual application, did they project a number? Because I don't recall that they did. but if anybody has different information, please say so.
And then finally, on this item, well, so if they're going to be handling the dropouts, so do we have similar programs? Do we have programs at all? We used to, dealing with dropouts?
We do, I mean, students can come back to school. I mean, it's not that once you drop out, you can't come back. But to have a program that's specifically designated for students that have dropped out, no, we don't have a dedicated program to that.
Okay, so, we will be making referrals if we don't?
No, they are, I think the model is that they will be advertising, so to speak, for students who have not completed their high school diploma and would like to. And then bringing those students back in, doing assessment on where they are in terms of their academic progress, and doing what it takes to get them completed.
Okay, and have they identified a location?
They may have, and I'm trying to
didn't see
think
anything
if I
there, maybe.
remember where it was. I'll have to get that information for you, because it's been a while since I saw that one, but we can get that for you.
Okay. Just a question on number 54. This is the adoption of the European history textbook. Now, the European history, this is the first for this booklet, Dr. French? Doctor?
No, this is part of the, textbooks kind of have a shelf life, and then you have to replace them. So this is a newer adoption. So it's not the first time that we've ever offered AP European history, but this is a new textbook because the old textbook, I don't know off the top of my head the publishing date, but it's outdated based on our renewal process for.
And this is the first time you say we're offering?
No, it's not the first time. So we've already had a pre-existing AP European history textbook. This would be a new adoption, a new edition, but we do currently have this course active, and next year they would receive new course materials.
Okay. Now, Doctor, this is probably a bigger discussion or question for some of the much bigger folks who follow the history. One would say that we've had American history, and what's the difference between the two? Because some would view that as European history. How does that mesh with what we have already?
Well, in the AP offerings, I mean, you have AP Government, you have AP US History, and you have AP European History. Those are off the top of my head. You also have AP Psychology. Those all fall into the social sciences history. And AP European focuses predominantly on Europe countries, whereas AP US History focuses on US history. AP Government focuses more on the government specific. So we can get you, if you're really interested, I mean, we can pull the syllabus for all of the AP kind of social science and history courses that we have.
And that's also
But they're
African-American history is there as well?
African-American history is not covered in the depth that Dr. Lane and I would like it in the U.S. history. We do have our own African-American history course that we tried to get approved through the College Board, and they wouldn't approve it. Our students do get weight, but they don't get college credit for that course. But the College Board did not agree to approve our African-American history course as a College Board endorsed course, but their U.S. history course does cover some African-American history, but it's not to the level of detail that our actual course does.
Okay, well, to me, Doctor, and I hope, Dr. Lane, you would pursue this, it seems there should be a sense of urgency for the African-American history. I mean, and it's just for obvious reasons. We're in a district predominantly African-American, but we can have a pull-out or standalone European history, a U.S. history, but the African-American, that's kind of...
I think you misunderstood, Mr. Brentley. We do have an African
I
American.
understand that, but I mean,
Okay.
to the level where we have
It
the
is-
others, that's my concern.
Well, it is a rigorous class, and we built it to be, we hoped, eligible for AP status. The College Board refused it, and they're the ones that make the decision, not us. And their grounds for refusal were that it was not a course that colleges would allow credit for, because that's what AP is. These are courses that colleges will allow students to get credit. But we did have some conversation at that time with both Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh about would they consider it outside of would they allow credit even though it wasn't an AP class? And so there is some potential there. Kids would have to pay tuition for it, that's the downside, but they could get college credit. But as I said, I pursued it with College Board. At the time, the course was developed because we had phenomenal writers for that class, and we wanted it to be a college-level class for kids because we saw it as a potential bridge into AP for students. But I got a flat-out no.
So what's the status of it now?
It's still a course. I mean, it's a course in our high schools. We have students that are taking it. It's a high-level course. It's a great course. I think that probably as an adult, I'd love to take that class. But our students are not able to take an AP test for it, and they cannot get college credit.
Now, we can pursue that again or at another level?
Sure, I can go
Okay.
again. I went to the top, but I can go to the top again.
Okay. Well, for me, Doctor, that would be a priority. It's kind of embarrassing to not say that we have a high priority on African-American history in a district that's predominantly African-American, while we have others that are there. So it would be a priority for me. I would know where to go, but I mean, I'm just encouraging you to either direct staff to do so or enlist some of those individuals who can help pursue it and find a different angle of getting it done. So I would just encourage you to do that. If we can make that a priority, it would be a great thing. And also, I thought I've read something where, for some reasons, the numbers are even dropping in terms of the students taking the African-American history classes.
And I can't speak to that. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I have not been told the numbers are dropping, so.
Okay, I thought I've seen
Yeah,
something.
and that may be possible.
Okay, so that's a priority for me. My final comment is on number 58, the donations from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I just want to say, on the final resolution, I agree 100% to extend a special thanks and appreciation to Chaz Callum, the manager and diversity initiatives for the Pittsburgh Pirates, for coordinating the effort. To those who haven't met this young man, a former Pittsburgh Public School student, I never caught him without a smile on his face and always willing to do what he's able to do for anyone. So he's top of the line for me, and I just want to give a shout out and thank him for doing a great job and representing the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
I started not to say this, but I think I should. When I reached out to College Board, tried to get this done, and got a flat-out no, not happening, it was written up in the press that I wasn't playing nice with College Board, and I should, be quiet. And not one person on the board or in the community said a word about that. So I have to say, I was disappointed that no one would step forward and say, listen, this really should be considered as an AP class, and College Board ought to think about it. So I just have to say that, because I felt pretty like I'm the only one that thinks this matters.
You know what I would say, and I don't remember, I just wish someone would have been able to bring it to our attention as a board. I mean, I can guarantee you there are folks out there who have major concerns about it, and we're just into Plan B. And those who are watching today, let's form a committee. Let's contract out the work and let someone do the legwork and provide some recommendations for you. And I believe that hopefully some watching today will at least contact you and offer their services. I guarantee you that most of them, the folks who are watching, would love to be a part of making it happen, because we know how important it is, especially with a large district where students are lost in terms of their cultural identity. It's really important. So, thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Runtley. Mrs. Clayton.
Thank you. First and foremost, Dr. Lane, I'm not surprised at all that the College Board would have denied that. They'll lose money at the end of the day, and that's what it's always about. So I'm not surprised at all. Maybe, if money wasn't always the issue, we could get a lot more things done. I am going to ask to pull number 50 for further discussion at our legislative meeting. I'm also probably going to ask that we pull it and have the ability to discuss it back in the committee. I understand that we have to have this policy as the legal, well, we have to have the policy. I am not comfortable with the policy as it is, and I would like to have the opportunity to be part of the discussion of this policy.
Just to be clear, and unless I'm remembering this incorrectly, we did have an open public meeting, a board workshop on this policy in June? Was it in June? It might have been in May.
It was when I was ill.
I understand that, but it's making it seem as though we haven't, the discussion seems as though we didn't have a public discussion on this matter, and we clearly did with, the parent representatives came and presented this to us, and we had a very rich discussion that lasted at least an hour, and it may have been 2. So I just want to be clear that we had a public meeting on this policy.
I'm not at all debating that. I thank you for clarifying that. However, I've had some issues since then that I think this policy may address and assist us with, and I'd like to bring it back to the table if possible. If that's the will of the board, it's the will of the board. If it's not, it's not. But I at least can make the effort. I think that I'm within my right to do that. So I'm asking, and I'm, of course, as I should be doing, asking you to understand that I will be pulling it for legislation, and I will be asking to pull this item for further discussion. The rest of them, I'm fine with. I have no issue with, including the code of conduct. I don't have an issue with that one either. I did have one other point or comment, if you'd give me a second. And what did I do with it? You know what, it's all right, if I have a question, I'll just send it to Dr. Lane, okay? Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a couple of quick ones. On number 52, Mr. McCray and I guess, read the package that's very similar this month. That seems like a really great opportunity. My only question would be, and I guess I can understand that the principal or the teacher specifically sought out this person, and this is, I'm sorry, the Japanese, the specialist of Japanese language helping to support Allderdice. Is there any opportunity for other Japanese programs in the district to access this type of resource? Because I know that Allderdice isn't the only school that offers Japanese, and particularly in the younger the programs with younger children, this seems like a real opportunity to benefit. So I would guess, I'm not sure what the elementary school is, if there is one, but I know Obama at middle school offers Japanese, and there may be more.
Yeah, I think we're trying to start a program at Starrett as well. This is through a special organization, the Japanese Language Education Assistance Program. I'm just going to have to look into that. I don't want to, give you inaccurate information, but I can look in to see if our other teachers could somehow benefit, like spend a day, right? Or if it has to be the Allderdice. We'll get you the information before next Wednesday.
Thank you, Dr.
Sure.
Lippert. Ms. McCray?
If memory serves me correctly, that's what they did. Duishi would go to different schools sometimes and share his knowledge and talk with different kids. So I think Mrs. Valdivia is very flexible there.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Item number 53, are the children already selected for this program? Do they, I'm sorry, this is the summer instrumental program for middle schoolers or rising middle schoolers? 53, if I said 57, that's not what I meant. I meant 53.
I don't think I heard you. This is, the students have not enrolled yet. They're aware of the program based on their music teacher at their school, but because the board hasn't approved the actual establishment of the summer instrumental program, actual live enrollments aren't being taken. So we have some students that are interested, but we haven't actively enrolled, and we're still in the process of finalizing the locations. So what this tab is actually asking you is to approve a community-based instrumental program. This will be the first time. This isn't the summer band camp. Sorry to confuse you. There is some, yeah. This one is actually to do a new program, a new summer program for 5th through 8th graders that would be completely community-based. And it's also asking that you allow the legal office that once we get the community-based organizations that the legal office can make sure the liability and those types of things are in place. So it's asking you for two things. We'll keep the board apprised as if you approve this next week, our enrollments, final locations, things like that if you want to visit. But we're not actually having active enrollment right now until you approve the program.
Okay, so it just hopefully, I'm basing this comment on the fact that you will do this and it will be successful. It seems like doing this in approval in May would be helpful going forward. So that way, whilst kids are still in school or before summer plans are actually already made, the opportunity for children to take advantage of this would be bigger. And just, I would just like the second or third, fourth, the comments on the generous donations from the Pirates. I can't remember the total number of tickets, but it's for two separate programs, for two separate groups of children, and it's a lot of tickets that the Pirates are offering to students and families of the district for free. Seeing no more on the Committee on Education, we can move on. Mr. Brentley?
Hey, Doctor, on that number 53, can you tell me, this is for the Summer Dreamers, is that right?
No, this is a new program that we have not offered before. So this is for an instrumental summer program. It is not our Summer Dreamers program. This is providing community-based opportunities for instrumental lessons outside of the regular school year. So the thought is to expose students in the community that otherwise may not have opportunities other than during the school year to have access to instruments, to be able to practice, to have instructors, and that's what this program is actually about. So this is the first year doing it. It took a while to secure kind of the partnerships, which is why it's coming so late. Ideally, like Ms. Shilley said, this would be something that we would start back in, the early spring to get it set. But we're hoping that, we did do some publicity, letting teachers know, to tell students that would likely be moving forward this summer. But
Okay.
this is a brand new program
Okay.
to offer community-based instrumental access to students.
No, we are not, this will not even, this is not in competition with our already established music program or attempting to reduce our regular music offerings.
No, what this is doing is actually trying to feed more students that actually matriculate into your high school bands to give them more exposure to instrumental.
Okay.
So we know that students typically pursue high school when they have more exposure in the middle grades. So this is getting students in 5 through 8 more exposure, practice, to really be able to set themselves up. A couple things. One is that we hope it opens opportunities for students that otherwise don't have it to audition for Kappa, but also that it will feed and grow our marching band programs and our concert bands in our high schools when they go to 9th grade.
You know, why don't we just establish a partnership for the East End, the African American Music Institute? And I've suggested that before about 2 years ago. They are established. I don't know if you've been in their facilities. They are established. They have some of our former and present employees who actually go over there and work with the student. It is a great program. But if we were to establish a contractual agreement for the East End schools, working out some kind of transportation, you can address what you're trying to do. Now I understand, because it makes a lot of sense. So this can almost act as a feeder for the kids as they get into the high schools, which is really needed when you get into the bands in high school. But, is that something that you can possibly maybe have some conversation with the wonderful Dr. Johnson, I believe, him and his wife? They've been there for years. I want to say 20 years. They also have a male chorus group. 80% of those kids are our kids. They're performing, and it's a well-organized thing. They actually put a nice little introductory video together on some of the activities. Everything you want to do, I think, with this experimental instrumental thing, they've already have it in place. So, I would hope if you would extend the conversation with them, get some suggestions. I would love to have our kids, especially in East End, because I still believe that they got the short end of the stick over the last 8 or 9 years as we move schools and close schools and so on. So, good, okay. And if you can't get a hold of them, let me know. I'll be more than happy to make some contact for you, or put them in touch with you. Great, thank you.
You're welcome. We'll now move on to the committee report on business and finance and start with consultants, contracted services, items 1 through, actually, we'll go through payments authorized and do 1 through 32. So that's the pink and the blue. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to start out by saying that we'll miss you, Mr. Camarda. I'm sure that you've trained Mr. Joseph well, and God bless you. I only have one question, and all I really want to know is on number 9. I mean, it just seems like every month we're buying more computers and more of this and more of that, and I'm not sure that I understand what the big picture is in that area. I maybe should be asking you this question. I'm not sure, like, we see the laptops, and then we see more computers, and then we see the iPads, and, which is all great, but what I don't see is the big picture. Like, where, I mean, this time they're going to science and technology. When we did the iPads, if I remember correctly, everybody had to put out a proposal on how they were going to get them. And then my question was the training. So I kind of want to know, with this kind of money, first of all, is it covered by E-rate? Which I don't know. And then secondly, what's the big picture? What's the plan here? What are we doing? Are we getting brand-new computers everywhere? Please help me understand.
I would be happy to. So the overall strategy for devices in the schools can be basically summed up in 2 phases. One, replace the existing devices to make sure they were operational. If you recall, I believe the early part of last year, we gave a presentation to the board, and we communicated that the average age of computers in the schools were about 8 years old. And so up to now, we have addressed, we have replaced the computers in all of the schools, and we are now below the 3-year mark. The second part of the strategy would be innovation, and that would be, for instance, the iPad strategy, how we can put newer technologies into the schools to support the curriculum. And particularly to SciTech, that school was designed and curriculum designed for a one-to-one program. And so that's why you did see the one-to-one or specific board tabs for that school.
So are we getting to the point where we want to be one-to-one in all of our schools? Is that your goal? Maybe not financially, okay? But, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, and I believe that's the question for the board. And Dr. Lane, please help me out here regarding the one-to-one strategy.
Right. Mrs. Scalesi, I think that ultimately would be great to have a one-to-one strategy in all of our schools, but it is not an immediate thing we're going to try to do, because our first goal was to try to get current technology in each school and have computers that actually work and that are not, so old that the software that kids might need to run or want to run on there won't even run on that computer. So that's first, but as I said, over time, not over our immediate period probably, but over time it would be great to have that as kind of a long-term goal for the district to get to a one-to-one strategy for our students.
And with this tab here, are you getting any kind of support? Is there support that goes with this board tab other than parts, labor, and the battery? Are you getting support?
No, actually, all this is really doing is taking out old computers, putting in new ones.
So who's installing them?
Well, it's a laptop, so there's not really an installation of a laptop.
Well, there's stuff you got to put on that laptop.
Well, the software would be loaded, Yeah, I mean, if you're going to plug it into a printer, for example, it's just putting a cable in there. So I don't know. It's not like bringing the desktop in. It's not quite the same level of installation.
If it was that easy, I could do it, and I can't.
The kids can.
Well, I know the kids can, there's no question. And where are we with the laptops and where they got distributed in the, thank you. Okay, yeah, the iPads, and where I was so worried about who was gonna get them and were they gonna be able to use them with the kids, because I know I was lost until I learned how to use it, and I just was so afraid that you were going to have teachers that didn't have any idea how to work them. Where are we with that?
And so I really must give kudos to the Office of Instructional Technology, Peggy Shields and her team. They established a iPad steering committee where the teachers met monthly to share best practices. And I believe some of the stories, the success stories, were included in the board updates, as well as an article that was in the Post-Gazette. And so there are a lot of good stories that have happened as a result of the iPad implementation. And I would say a community of learners have been built around that technology within the district, supported by the Office of Instructional Technology.
I learned by going through the iPad that had the free app to learn how to do the iPad.
Well, I think you'll have to watch YouTube and see 2- and 3-year-olds learning by just handing it to them, because they're like way past us. The one thing that Mr. McCray reminded me of is there is a summer intern that's being hired by the Department of Technology, a student actually, to help the regular technical staff with the summer iPad installation process. They're getting them distributed, and so they're ready to go for school. No, I'm sorry, the laptops. The laptops. Yeah, the summer laptops, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Welcome. Mr. Brentley?
Yeah, just a quick question, and we won't beat the dead horse here. But on the front page of the consultants and contracts, it says here that there's 65% of this is EBE, 63.3 is EBE type. What does that mean?
Women-owned businesses. WB, that's the type of the EB category,
Okay.
so WB,
Okay.
women-owned businesses.
But the EBE would be considered the race base or the minority MBE? I guess, is that?
The EB would include all categories, race, gender, and disadvantaged businesses.
Okay. So how do we single out and pull out the minority side? Because I raised a question before, what little that's being, opportunity is given to women, but there's no way of sectioning and pulling out African-American women and African-American owned businesses. How do we show that, or what column shows that?
Sorry. It's the column that's right before the EB type WB. If you go right to the left of it, it's EB type MBE, and those are the minority-owned businesses.
EBE type, so that's the 2% figure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, but I thought you just said that covered everything.
No, I said that the total EB, when you look at the EB total commitments, that covers everything.
Okay, oh, they call them EB types. Okay, so, all right, so African-Americans this month, or African-American owned companies and businesses will make up roughly 2% of the business. Women will make up is 65.6%, and then the EBE types, which is those two columns combined along with the others as well as small businesses, would make up the 63.3? Is that how you read that?
No, the minority-owned businesses make up 2.32%.
Okay.
The women-owned businesses make up 63.3%, and the total EBE commitment is 65.63%.
Okay, okay. Well, I appreciate that. I am still just trying to find a way. I mean, as I mentioned before, it seems to be a great program for women, but what's shared to me often is that those women still find a way to single out, and we can see by the numbers, the African-American businesses. So I'm just asking that your staff would continue to work hard, but to also make it very clear that we're open for business and that we establish relationships with other minority-owned companies to give them an opportunity. Helpful, but to me, just a little unacceptable to only say that we can show 2%. I know they're applying, I know they're trying, but for some reason, it just doesn't balance out. So I am going to continue to ask, continue to raise the question that we find a way to prioritize this when we're giving out these contracts here. Thank you. That's all I have.
You're welcome, Mr. Bentley. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. We're going up to, what, number 32 or 31? 32? Okay. Really no specific comments on this section. I just wanted to make a comment concerning the usage of iPads. I did have the opportunity of going to Miller African Centered Academy and was taken on a tour through the entire school, almost every classroom, and they are making excellent use of the iPads in that school. They were they had a successful proposal sent in, and I think they received over, I think it was like 231 iPads for the school. The things that first of all, the kids have to earn their way to use the iPad, and once they do, they can chart their progress. They can easily see how they compare with other students in the district, how they compare with students in the rest of the state, know where they stand on the mastery of all their different items that they have to study and work on. And just the fact that in watching it, as far as it's good to see that they're all in protective cases, and if they were to be dropped, they probably wouldn't, bust up unless you really slammed them down. And it's becoming a very useful and helpful tool within the classroom. And eventually, as we move with technology, hopefully we'll use it appropriately and folks understand what's going on. Thank you, Ms. Shelley.
You're welcome, Mr. Sumter. And since you're there, I'm going to actually reiterate a point I made were we here Monday? Monday evening at the envisioning meeting. The principal of Miller may be able to speak to the well-rounded education people receive when they don't have to audition for art schools in the middle school level. She may have attended Rogers without auditioning and benefited from that. Mr. McCray? Okay, so then I'll keep talking. I just wanted to call out, well, no, first, I'll start with, thank you for providing this chart. I think we talked about this a month ago, and this is exactly what we asked for. Well, this is what I wanted. I don't know about what everybody else wanted, but this, to the conversation that Mr. Bentley was having, this is how you have that conversation, by having the information in front of you. And so this is very, very helpful. So I acknowledge Ms. Castleberry. Thank you very much. On item number 8, I just wanted to acknowledge that, because that goes back to the 19 in education package for the genealogical studies. Item number 8 is, it's different, but similar. I'm drawing a connection, Dr. Lippert. Eventually I'll get there. Is accessing historical African-American newspapers, and I believe it's specific to it's actually specific to K-5s, which is, used by K-5 teachers. Is that not correct? I was all excited.
It is. This came in, so there's a companion course to African American history that when Dr. Lane appealed to the College Board, we did not have the companion course African American literature developed. Now we have 2 courses that are upper level, mostly taken as seniors. Our African American literature course is a replacement course to English 4. You can take English 4 traditional, or you can take as your English 4 credit African American literature. This came in to support predominantly that course. What's happened over time is because with the Common Core, we have to introduce more informational reading and text, that we're going to pull it down as we revise some of the curriculum in K-5. So little history on that, just because of the relevancy of the conversation with African American history tonight.
That is awesome, Dr. Lippert. Thank you very much for that. Item number 18, just what? Oh, I ask this every time, and I realize it may be more work than it's worth, but if they could figure out a way to stop sending 3 packets to people with 3 kids, that would be awesome. It may cost the exact same amount, but honest to goodness, I swear to you, I do not need 3 district calendars. I do not. Somebody has to figure out that they're coming to the same address. And if it costs them the same amount to figure it out as it would have to print the calendar, I would rather pay them to figure out and not use the paper. That's just my 2 cents on that, because I get 3 of them. Well, I get 4 because I'm on the board. So that's a lot for us getting these delivered. And I'm sure there's people across the district with multiple children who get this packet multiple times and unnecessarily. And then for some reason I have number 30. That's wrong. It's not number 30. I got one more. Hold on one second. I'm sorry, I do have another one, and I can't find it, so if you'll just humor me, and we can move on, and if I do figure out what it was, I'll come back and ask my question. So we can move on to items 33. Oh, through the end, through 36, general authorization. Mr. Brentley?
No questions.
Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. 35 deals with the Somerset Tax Increment Financing, known as a TIF plan, operations and law. 36 is the East Liberty Transit Revitalization Investment District Plan, the TRID, operations and law. First of all, a question for Ms. Kramer on number 36, which is the East Liberty Transit Revitalization Investment District Plan, the TRID. Have we developed language to be presented to the board before this one item is voted on, which would change the policy language that we have for TIFs to include TRIDs in that policy?
That policy does not currently include TRIDs, but it's certainly something that we can look at and bring it to the policy committee. I'm off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what is in the TIF policy, but I will review that and make sure there's nothing in conflict and make sure you have that information before next week.
Okay, Mr.
And for the 700 series, which includes the TIF policy, we're set to have a board workshop on that policy on, I believe the committee meeting is going to be on Monday, and the board workshop is going to be July 9th, I believe.
Okay, but these items are coming before us next week. How are we going to have changed policy language before next, or do we need change policy language before next week?
Mr. Sumter, we had discussed this, and even before our last meeting when we had discussion, I think Mr. Joseph clarified, it was when Ms. Burkhart was here, that the goal and desire is the board to have embedded in the policy, but the policy does not have to be approved and be in place before the voting of the specific item because of the detail within the item. so it doesn't need the policy to be first, because there was a discussion that we had when the presentation was made, and I believe Mr. Joseph actually spoke and clarified in the same way that you can do it without the policy in place.
Let me maybe say it this way. We have nothing on the books, nothing in any of our policies that speaks to a transit revitalization investment district. How can we vote on a transit revitalization investment district if we have no language that talks to that?
Well, because the state law that, the state act that enabled the TRID as a financing tool gives school districts and municipalities the ability to enter into an agreement, into an agreement that forms a TRID. So while the board policy doesn't explicitly state it, the act that was passed by the state enables us and gives us the power to pass that. And I believe I drew made a connection to our current purchasing policy, which is not currently updated, but state law has been updated since that time. So we use the revised state thresholds to administer our purchasing rules, as opposed to the older thresholds that are currently in our policy that is yet to be revised.
So what you're saying is, in absence of any local district, school district policy, as long as the state authority is granted to all school districts or whatever, that they could act without the policy being in place?
That's correct. And this would be one of these cases that we discussed a lot of times at policy committee, where there's no mandate for a policy, but it's something the board policy committee and the board may want to consider having, but there's no requirement that you have it, and therefore that it can go forward.
Could we have a small summary or synopsis of that put in the information update to the board, so that all the board members are aware of that before next Wednesday's meeting? Is that possible? Yes. I'm waiting for that.
Sorry for the implied yes.
Everybody started writing. I was like, yeah, okay. Let's see. A question regarding the East Liberty TRID, which I don't think anybody at the table here can answer, and maybe our guests that are with us. We have representatives from the URA in the audience with us. There had been talk about the property surrounding Barack Obama International Studies Academy, and has there been any update or information regarding the ownership and/or the possibility of converting that property into parking?
Yes, we have looked.
Could you please identify yourself first?
My name is Robert Rubenstein. I'm the acting executive director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority. We have looked into the property ownership. The property that I believe you're looking at across North Beatty is mostly privately owned property. There are 2 city-owned parcels within that large, what appears to be a large lot. There are 2 city-owned parcels that are pledged to East Liberty Development, Inc. I will remind the board that a year and a half, 2 years ago, we did sit down with staff at the school district and looked at accommodating additional parking around the school, and a number of changes were made, particularly along East Liberty Boulevard, to accommodate parking for employees of the school. Additionally, we, in the spirit of that partnership, we are prepared to re-engage with the school district, with the community, East Liberty Development, Inc., and there are a couple options that we would like to pursue, where there might be the potential for leased parking, across Highland Avenue at the seminary. In their secure lot, there is some surplus parking. They're open to conversations. There is parking potentially on city-owned property near the old Detective Bureau building within Penn Circle. That ultimately is a development site, but in the near term, that could be a possibility. So those are some of the ideas, and again, through a partnership, we would like to continue to explore that with the communities.
Thank you. How many parcels are we talking about? You said there were 2 city parcels. Do you know how many total parcels we're talking about? At the North Beatty?
I don't know that answer because there are houses on some of them. There's some that are vacant lots, but they're all privately owned except for 2.
There are 13 parcels.
13?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Kramer, could you answer the question, if the school district does not approve the TRID, what happens to that project? And say if the other taxing bodies were to approve it, or if anybody else in the room can answer that question.
That would be, I believe it would come to a halt and the TRID would not advance.
So all three, it's necessary for all 3 taxing bodies, the county, the city, and the school district, to approve a TIF or a TRID in order for it to move forward.
From an economics standpoint of implementing the TRID, yes. From a policy standpoint, no.
Could you clarify that?
It is possible that a TIF or a TRID could advance with not all of the taxing bodies. In this particular case in East Liberty, the economics of the project are such that if all 3 taxing bodies are not participating, then the TRID would not be able to advance. And the project would be dead.
So it hinges upon what's pledged from each taxing body in terms of deferred taxes that would go into the project to make it viable.
Correct.
Thank you. Ms. Shealy? Yes, I'm done.
So, as a percentage of the TRID, who's the biggest party to that TRID?
I believe the school district, we'd have to double check that because of, there's a large tax increment generating project the school district is opting out of and not participating in, so it does equalize the city. With the city's pledge of parking tax as well, the city may be comparable to the school district. I would have to check that figure for you.
I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. As far as percentages are, the percentages are the same, but because of absolute dollars generated by the taxing bodies, our dollars are larger. As Mr. Rubenstein stated, it's the site that he was referencing. Our board, we are not participating in the development was on the old Reisenstein site. That was part of the agreement. We would never participate in any type of a tax, a TIF or a TRID in that parcel. So it does change it overall. But as far as percentages, it's the same percentage for all taxing bodies. It's just the dollars are, because our tax rate.
Yeah, could you take that a little slower for me? Because on a piece of property, I don't pay the same percentage to each of the 3 taxing bodies.
But we're pledging the same percentage of our share of taxes as the city and the county. The shares
But
are
our share is so much bigger
But
that the
generate-
amount of money.
Right, is greater from us, which is why the answer was
So let
without us.
me put it simple. Who's the big dog in this fight? And as far as taxing bodies go?
School district.
Thank you very much. So I think what we are asking for help with is a little help with parking. And we're talking, how much is this TRID worth? 40 million from, is it 40,
No, 12 million,
12 million?
yes.
So for
Well,
$12 million in taxing benefit, we're asking for parking relief, for assistance with a parking problem that is essentially untenable for the teachers and staff who work at Peabody.
Well, first off, I'd say of the $12 million for public infrastructure, approximately 1 million of that is going toward pedestrian enhancements around the school. So we can reallocate that money toward parking if that's something that's the wish of this board. That aside, we are, as we have in the past, willing to work with you and the community to look at parking, work with the city, see what options they have. But in terms of the property that you have identified, those are privately owned parcels. There are 13 parcels, as Mr. Porter said. I'm sorry. The only 2 of those are owned by the city of Pittsburgh, and again, those are pledged for a different use. The other 11 parcels are privately owned. So I don't know that that's a viable option unless those property owners agree to sell that property, which when we last raised this issue 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, there was strong opposition to that by those property owners.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCray, did you have a chance to ask your questions? I'm sorry, that parking issue is a stick in my craw, and I'm not honestly getting warm and fuzzies about this at this point. So I guess you can tell that I'm not at all happy and not really willing to support this because we need a little bit of help for what I consider to be a lot of money. So, you know, it is what it is. Mr. McCray?
I agree with you. I think the parking issue is a big one, and I didn't think about the detective bureau. I think that's a good spot that we could actually get a commitment from. If we get one hard commitment before next week, I think it would be really beneficial. Maybe you guys can work double time on that. But I have no questions on the agenda. I just want to thank Mr. Camarda for all his years of service. It's been great working with you, Pete.
And with that, I think we'll leave on a high. This meeting is adjourned.